I cannot believe how many people are pouring in. We had over 4,000 people register for this event, it's always wild to me when people show up for things. So thank you all for taking time out of your evening. If you are joining us from the National Academy's virtual event and moving over here, welcome. Thank you so much. All right, so my name is Dr. Colette Delawalla. I just got my PhD last week, so I'm allowed to say that now. I'm the founder and CEO of Stand Up for Science. I describe myself as a white woman. I've got my tortoiseshell glasses on, a little bob, and a black and white striped shirt with a blue background with shelves of books. And I want to thank you all so much for answering the call to meet in this very emergent moment. Before we dive into today's very fantastic lineup, just a quick accessibility note. We have enabled automatic generations for live captioning in tons of languages. So if you need that, please don't hesitate to use it. You can use the closed caption functioning to select languages of your choice. And to help us get a good idea of who's in the meeting, please help us by going to the chat panel and going to the polls section. Just answer 2 quick questions about yourself. And we'll be good to go there. As you can see, if you need it, we do have ASL interpretation as well. Thank you so much to our interpreters today. Appreciate you all. All right, so it is time to jump right in. I am delighted to introduce this first guest. Dr. Carolyn Bertozzi is the Baker Family Director of the Sarah Fan Chem H. Ann T. and Robert M. Bass Professor in the School of Humanities and Sciences and Professor by courtesy of the Chemical and Systems Biology of Radiology at Stanford University. And an investigator at HHMI. Professor Bertozzi's research focuses on the fundamental studies of diseases associated with glycobiology and the development of new therapeutic modalities that target these pathways. Her interventions include bioorthogonal chemistries for in vivo imaging and bioconjugation. And for this work, she received the 2022 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Her lab has also developed some truly next-generation therapeutic modalities that have been translated into clinical candidates for treatment of cancer and autoimmune disease. All right, so Dr. Bertozzi, take it away.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Colette, so much for inviting me to share this space with so many concerned scientists and citizens. I thought I would give you a little bit of background. I'm originally from Massachusetts, from the Boston area, and I grew up in a science family. My father was a professor of nuclear physics at MIT, and his story is one that was really marked by growing up in the Great Depression and then during World War II. You know, he was born in 1931. He's turning 95 next week. And when he was a kid, you know, science was elevated in the eyes of society because it was the inventions from science that got us through World War II, that got us out of the Great Depression, that put individuals into space and onto the moon. His was the generation that developed all the technologies of communications, satellites, and energy security and homeland security. And so my upbringing was one in which we thought of science as a way that a person could serve the nation and serve humanity more generally. And then I was born in 1966. And by the time I went to college, which was in the mid-1980s, we were very much in the molecular biology revolution, which was powered by chemistry in many ways. And so I was drawn to the field of chemistry because of the impact that chemistry can have on biology and on medicine. And so I've dedicated my own life to biomedical science to serve the nation and to serve the needs of humanity. And now I find myself, as I'm turning 60 in a few months, suddenly in unprecedented times where the federal government that throughout my lifetime had been a staunch supporter of basic science as well as applied science, suddenly is turning in a different direction. And I think all of us are here, and Colette, you have mobilized our community of scientists because of the recent release of new policies from OMB that would threaten the quality of science and that would diminish my ability and all of our abilities as scientists to serve the nation in the ways that we could. So I'm hoping that this is the beginning of many conversations that lead to an escalating outcry and civic engagement on the part of scientists to communicate to our nation, to the people around us, how vital our research is for the quality of life of humanity, and not just for ourselves, but for our children and our grandchildren. Colette, you and I were talking right before the session about how this is a 5-alarm fire. And we need people, everyone, to first of all, understand the implications of these new policies, which we'll be talking about during this hour, and make sure that you reach out and make your voice heard. That would start with making public comments online before the deadline of July 13th, as well as to reaching out to our representatives and our senators to make it clear how important science is to us and how important it is that the activities of science remain grounded in the truth, in quality, in peer review, and not subject to the whims of a political system, which doesn't understand the details of science, the technologies, the implications, the long-term impact, the way those of us who've been trained in the field have for the majority of our lives. So with that, I'm really looking forward to the discussion over the next hour, and I apologize for the commotion behind me because I'm waiting to board a flight at the airport. Thank you.
Dr. Bertozzi, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you squeezing us in and taking the time to encourage the scientists. We have almost 2,000 people on this call, and I know that they just really appreciate hearing from you. Up next, also, it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Professor Timothy Snyder. He holds the inaugural Temery Chair in Modern European History at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. Dr. Snyder's work has appeared in 40 languages and has received numerous prizes, including the Foundation for a Polish Science Prize in Social Sciences. And his words are quoted in political demonstrations around the world, most recently in Hong Kong and here in the United States in the No Kings protests. I bought On Tyranny the day after the election in 2024 and read it within that week. And it was one of the sort of foundations for me in starting Stand Up for Science. So it's always wonderful when we get an opportunity to speak with Dr. Snyder. So here he is. And thank you again so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Colette, and it's such a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really happy to be included in this because science and democracy go together. We're not going to do one without the other. And I think we're at a moment where it's not just that things are so bad that we have to describe them in protest. It's also that things are so bad that perhaps we can find a way to communicate the scale of all this in a way which will reach beyond even the very important community that you're building and growing of scientists who are active. One of the reasons I think that is that the sort of rule which is being proposed here, it seems as though it would have also general applicability to much of the rest of the executive branch, which means that if this can happen to science, it will happen to everything else, which means that no one in the country, regardless of whether they think they are affected by science or not, no one will be unaffected. If this sort of rulemaking or rule breaking becomes the norm, then government itself will cease to work. And I think that the argument can be made at that level. The second thing I wanted to say is that it's very clear reading this text that its intention is to make science not work anymore. And I think that is probably the right framing because it's the truth. This was written by people who don't want science to work for whatever reason. So, I mean, the details that grants can be stopped at any time for no reason, or that it's all political rather than meritocratic, those are important parts of the structure of the argument. But the basic argument is that this document was put together by people who don't want science to work anymore. Historically, and this is my third point, what this really reminds me of is late Stalinism, when the Soviet Union had a very impressive scientific apparatus, but certain important branches of science were subject to direct political approval from top down, and therefore they failed. And therefore the Soviet Union fell behind. And so we're asking ourselves whether we want to repeat that, whether we want to create this, so to speak, Stalinist situation where people who know nothing about science are the ones who are making the decisions about what's going to go forward. The fourth thing I thought about this, and many of you, the rest of you have had this thought too, is competitiveness. There's no way the United States could be competitive. I mean, even leaving out the life-giving and life-saving and life-enriching aspects of science, there is no way that the United States can be competitive with China or with anybody with these kinds of rules. We will fall behind very, very quickly. And it reads as though our competitors are the ones who wrote this. Like if someone from the outside were trying to destroy US science, this is exactly the kind of text that they would write. And the final thing I wanted to say, because I want to make sure I'm leaving room for everybody else, you've got such a great lineup. The final thing that I want to say is that this reads as though it's written by people who don't think science should work. But if science does work in their minds, it's kind of like magic, where like anybody can do it. You know, you can just kind of point at someone and they can do science. And science is like this magical thing. It reminds me of the way that the president talks about the military, where he just doesn't know anything. And he thinks if he just kind of waves his hand in a general direction, people can perform magic and make things happen. And so when I got to the end of this, what I was thinking is that like, this is not Project 2025. I mean, the phrase that kept repeating itself in my mind was Project Witchcraft. Like this is essentially medieval, you know, and that's actually being unfair to people in the Middle Ages, but this is essentially Project Witchcraft. That's what it would bring to us. Thanks for having me on. You guys do such great work. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Professor Snyder, and really, really appreciate the fact that you did not mince words. And so, yes, thank you so, so much. I love this framing of Project Witchcraft, and I think we're going to have to run with it. So thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Snyder, for joining us. All right, and next up we have Congresswoman Judy Chu. Judy Chu was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in July 2009. She represents the 28th Congressional District, which includes the 28th Congressional District of California, which includes Pasadena and the West San Gabriel Valley of Southern California. Representative Chu currently serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee and has jurisdiction over legislation pertaining to taxes, revenues, Social Security, and Medicare. In that committee, Representative Chu is a member of the Subcommittee on Health, giving her oversight over healthcare reform and crucial safety net programs, worker and family support and oversight. And she also serves on the House Budget Committee. So she is a fabulous person to have speaking with us today. And we're really just delighted to have her. And also happy primary day, Congresswoman Chu. All right, passing it off.
Well, hello, I'm Congressmember Judy Chu from Southern California, and I want to thank Stand Up for Science for organizing this emergency meeting. We are here because the threat to American science has never been greater. Just last week, Trump's Office of Management and Budget released a sweeping proposal to fundamentally reshape how nearly $1 trillion in federal grants are administered across the government. If implemented, it would give political appointees unprecedented power over research funding and open the door to ideological interference in decisions that should be guided by scientific merit, expert review, and the public interest. That proposal, though, is only the latest step in a much broader campaign against science, research, and higher education. And the stakes could not be higher. America's leadership in science and technology is not guaranteed. It depends on sustained investment, academic freedom, international collaboration, and a commitment to evidence-based decision-making. But all those pillars are under attack right now. I hear about these attacks firsthand because some of the best scientists in the world live and work in my district at institutions like Caltech and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Researchers are pushing the boundaries of what's possible by exploring the far reaches of the universe and developing life-saving technologies, as well as finding cures for the world's deadliest diseases. And so I get to see every day just how vital federal investment is to that progress. But We have spent months watching damage accumulate across the scientific enterprise. And instead of reversing course, this administration continues to propose devastating cuts to agencies like the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health. Since Trump took office, his administration has canceled or frozen over $1.5 billion in grants from the NIH and NSF. They're withholding federal funds already approved by Congress and eliminating entire programs and missions. They're even canceling grants just because they include words like diversify, bias, or even the word female. They're revoking the visas of international researchers without justification, and they keep pushing for reckless cuts to science in their annual budget requests, such as proposing to slash NSF funding in half. Congress rejected those cuts last year, but it hasn't stopped the Trump administration for asking for the same cuts this year. This is wreaking havoc on the entire scientific community. And now we're entering an even more dangerous phase. In April, the Trump administration fired all 22 members of the National Science Board, an independent board that is supposed to provide apolitical expert advice to guide the work of the NSF. Combined with the administration's new OMB proposal, that would concentrate more power in the hands of political officials and weaken the independent scientific expertise that's made American research the gold standard around the world. We know the truth. This isn't about reducing fraud, waste, or abuse like the Trump administration claims. If that were true, we wouldn't be spending $2 billion per day on a reckless war with Iran. This is about defunding science and progress, weakening academic research institutions, and punishing voices that they disagree with. So what do? First, we are legislating. As co-chair of the Bipartisan Planetary Science Caucus in Congress, I'm leading the effort to ensure robust funding for NASA science. Congress must push back strongly against the president's proposed cuts in our fiscal year 27 funding bills. And we have to conduct aggressive oversight on actions like this latest OMB proposal and defend the independence of the federal research enterprise. Next, we are litigating. Democratic state attorneys general, universities, and legal groups all around the country have filed hundreds of lawsuits challenging this administration's illegal actions. And finally, we are activating. And that is why it is so important to have organizations like Stand Up for Science. The administration is hoping to wear us down in hopes that we give up. Well, we can't let that happen. Our greatest power is having engaged people like you. We need to keep speaking out, organizing, and reminding everyone what's at stake. Every medical breakthrough, every technological innovation, every scientific discovery that improves people's lives begins with a commitment to research and a belief that knowledge matters. So thank you for staying engaged. Thank you for standing up for science. I'm with you, and together we are stronger and we will fight back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Chu, for being with us today and for those powerful words. It I think makes people feel in this room, and certainly myself and our team, better knowing that we have folks in Congress who are willing to stand up for science, who are fighting in the various committees. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing in DC and in California. All right, next up, we have Congressman Walkinshaw, who serves on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which oversees the federal workforce. In this role, Congressman is focused on protecting the nonpartisan civil service, and Lord knows we need protecting for those folks, supporting fair pay, benefits, and treatment for federal employees, strengthening oversight of federal procurement and information technology, and holding our administration accountable. Representative Walkinshaw is the founder and co-chair of the first ever Congressional Federal Workforce Caucus, which works to protect federal employees, defend merit-based civil service from political interference. So really could not come at a better time. And Congressman, we're excited to have another fighter here in Congress and standing up for science. So over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to Stand Up for Science for having me. Congresswoman Chu is a hard act to follow. She is such a passionate and effective champion for scientists and scientific research. And as the previous speakers articulated well, the Trump administration last week took yet another step toward politicizing the federal government, this time by targeting one of the very foundations of American scientific progress. For generations, research grants have been awarded on a simple principle: the best ideas should win. Scientists, researchers, independent experts evaluate proposals on merits and ensure that taxpayer dollars support the most promising work and the discoveries most likely to improve people's lives. That is a system, a process that has helped make the United States the global leader, without question, the global leader in medical research, scientific innovation, and technological advancement. And now we have an administration proposing to upend that very system. Under the proposal we've discussed today, political appointees would be given unprecedented authority to review, override, and even terminate, cancel research grants based on whether they align with, quote, the president's political priorities. Under this rule, decisions that should be driven by evidence and expertise will instead be driven by one president's politics. And look, this is a playbook that we've seen before. We know that DOJ tried to mass terminate thousands of federal grants. Many of those were challenged successfully in court. Now the administration is basically trying to rewrite the rules to make those grant cancellations permanent. This would make political interference a formal part of the federal grant-making process. And at its core, we have to recognize it as part of a broader effort to concentrate power in the executive branch and diminish the role that Congress, independent experts, and nonpartisan career public servants, civil servants, play in governing our country. The Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse, yet this is a proposal that would shift enormous influence over federal funding decisions away from nonpartisan experts and toward political appointees whose primary responsibility is advancing the president's agenda. And this doesn't come in a vacuum. And if you're watching this webinar, you probably know this. This comes after months and months of sustained attacks on scientific expertise throughout the federal government, throughout universities, throughout the country. Over the past year, experienced scientists, researchers, and public health experts have been sidelined, pushed out, attacked, or ignored. The agencies responsible for protecting public health and advancing scientific discovery have seen their expertise hollowed out from within. I talk every day to my constituents in Northern Virginia, many of whom were researchers working for the federal government or on federal grants or programs, about the attacks from this administration. And after weakening scientific capacity inside the government, they're now moving to weaken scientific judgment in the research funding process itself. And the message is clear: scientific merit is no longer determinative of research funding. And that's a dangerous path, because the cancer patients who are waiting for new treatments, the families confronting Alzheimer's and hoping for breakthroughs to continue, communities that are facing public health threats, they will be the victims of this decision. And they happen to be Democrats, independents, Republicans, by the way. Researchers shouldn't have to wonder whether their funding depends on political, ideological, or partisan approval. And scientists shouldn't have to second guess and think about their work in those contexts either. Universities and research institutions shouldn't have to navigate political or ideological tests in order to compete for federal support. When promising research is denied because it doesn't fit the political agenda of the moment, the American people will pay the price. The question isn't whether politics will influence research. Under this proposal, that's the point. That's their goal. And ultimately, the American people will lose. Because while we're asking whether research is politically acceptable, our strategic competitors and adversaries around the globe are asking how quickly they can make the next discovery. And that's not how America became the world's engine of innovation in the first place. For generations, we've benefited from a simple but pretty powerful idea that scientific decisions should be guided by evidence, expertise, and merit. And that's a principle that's delivered cures, innovations, incredible economic growth, and longer, healthier lives for millions of Americans. And we cannot afford in this critical moment to abandon it. Because if politics replaces merit in the grant-making process, we'll lose more than scientific integrity. We will undermine our ability to solve problems, to drive innovation, and to improve the lives of the American people. So I look forward to partnering with Stand Up for Science and all of you in defeating this rule over the weeks and months to come. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Really, really happy to have you, and glad to know that we have a fighter in Congress that I think always brings us a little bit of peace, especially in moments like this. All right, folks, next up, we will have one more person who is joining us from France. I believe he's joining us from Paris today. And then after that, we're going to switch into gears a little bit more about the meat of the OMB proposal and the actions that we're taking next. So next up, we have Bruno Perrin, who comes to us from a family of scientists, some of whom were the founders of the Union Rationalist. He spent his entire career in auditing and consulting, specializing in the media, telecommunications, and technology sectors. His research focuses on the valuation of cultural industries and corporate governance. At the end of his professional career, he took responsibility for the finances of the Union Rationalist and became head of the board. As a Franco-American, Bruno has been committed to, from the outset, to combating Trumpism, advocating for the rule of law, and supporting the development of open science, autonomous and sustainably funded. I'm really, really glad to have Bruno here with us today. He is a huge friend of SUF's, and I think you all really enjoy his perspective. Take it away, Bruno.
Thank you very much, Colette. It's a great honor for the Rationalist Union to be able to express its support in the face of the countless attacks targeting American institutions and our colleagues since Trump came up to power. The Rationalist Union was founded in the 30s by left-wing scientists and intellectuals to combat the rise of fascist movements in France. I'm head of the board of trustees of this association, and my great-grandfather, Jean Perrin, was one of its founders, along with his friend Paul Langevin. We are commemorating the 100th anniversary of his Nobel Prize in Physics this year. The Rationalist Union awarded its 2025 prize to the fledgling Stand Up for Science movement because its struggle is crucial for the future of the American people and for the future of our planet. It is clearly a fight of the Enlightenment against obscurantism and fascism, but it's also a fight for the health and future prosperity of the American nation and against ignorance and irrationalism. Thank you for what you do for America and for the world. We are concerned about the spread of MAGA methods and theory in Europe, but we are also witnessing democratic renewals, such as in Hungary this spring. The historical situation is complex as it was before the war. Let us remember that after the creation of the Rationalist Union and the rise of fascism, there was the left-wing government of Léon Blum in France, which, in addition to major social advances, fostered the development of sciences like never before. That happened thanks to the impetus of Jean Zay, Minister of National Education, and his Secretaries of State, Irène Joliot-Curie, for a couple of months. She really wanted to return to her lab. And for 2 years, Jean Perrin, with the creation of the CNRS, the National Center for Scientific Research, numerous astronomical observatories, and the Palais de la Découverte, Palace of Discovery, the first science museum where the public could see science in action. Alas, Nazi barbarity tragically followed this period of democratic, social, cultural, and scientific progress. The Rationalist Union was then forced to cease its activities for a couple of years. Jean Perrin and some 30 families of scientists involved in nuclear physics were invited by American universities, funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and the Wertheimer and Rothschild families, and are resuming the fight from your country, the United States. These back and forth trips across the Atlantic to safeguard democracy are not over. We are a living proof of that. They should encourage us to continue the fight for science, enlightenment, and rationality by all means. Thank you so much for including us in your struggle, which is also ours.
Bruno, thank you so much for those words, and really appreciate you and your colleagues and all of the scientists over in Europe, especially in France. I've got a soft spot for you French folks for supporting us and cheering us on from across the pond. And thank you so much for joining us today. All right, folks, now we're going to transition into a little bit more of a legal perspective. I am really excited to introduce Ambassador Retired, Norman Eisen, who's the co-founder and executive chair of Democracy Defenders Fund. I would just like to note he has had two very significant wins against the Trump administration just this week, and it is only Tuesday. He has been helping lead the successful national court fights against the Trump administration, helping secure multiple landmark orders against its authoritarian moves. His work in the court of law is matched by his efforts in the court of public opinion as the co-founder and publisher of The Contrarian. He is also the co-founder and former chair of other major nonprofits, including Crew and States United. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our friend Norman. Have at it. Perhaps. Sorry for the, here we are. Huh?
Oh.
And here we are. Thank you so much.
Have you got me? Oh,
yeah,
terrific.
We got you.
Terrific. Well, I'm so honored to join you to stand up for science and to speak out against this new and heinous initiative by OMB and Director Vogt. The Office of Management and Budget has been somewhat of a battering ram for the Trump administration in so many of the initiatives that have attacked foundations of our democracy, like science, truth, and evidence, the rule of law, free and fair elections, integrity as opposed to the corruption that we've seen over and over again. And we've fought that and we've won. And I'm here today in the aftermath of two of those major victories out of the over 300 legal cases and matters that we have commenced at Democracy Defenders Fund and Democracy Defenders Action to tell you that we can win this fight as well. You know, when any one of us is attacked as scientists and the institutions, organizations, and programs that advance science to the benefit of all of us as Americans and the world. When any one of us is attacked, we're all attacked. But the good news about those attacks is that the pushback has been equally ferocious. So I'll just give you some examples of some of the things that have been successful for us in recent days. We struck a 1-2 knockout punch against the corruption of this administration in winning our Kennedy Center case, the renaming of the Kennedy Center, and the closure of the Kennedy Center. And the same core argument here, that you have to actually follow the evidence, the facts, the data, reason, and logic. Those same virtues that we're talking about on this webinar were at the center of that victory, because the court found that the subservient, just like Mr. Vogt, that subservient Kennedy Center board didn't really think about the evidence of what would happen if you change the name of that building. It would lead to the hemorrhaging of artists and audiences alike, and that there was no proper consideration on the closure of the building about questions like, is it possible to keep that open? Make no mistake, that's a fight over evidence and data and logic, just like we have here. And then our other major victory, of course, was getting a bipartisan group of judges, something unprecedented. We've never seen this before in American history, to file with the court in Florida to reopen the Trump tax case and to investigate this $1.8 billion slush fund. Again, the court found that there was no sufficient showing that we had to investigate whether there was any logical reason basis for this, or whether it was a pure giveaway. So we are confident that similarly in this situation, and I know there's further analysis to be done, decisions to be undertaken about whether or not litigation will ensue. But we feel that here also, that if we stand up for science and together we fight for science, we can be successful. So we hope to offer some inspiration, but we're also here for all of you. We've been so honored to represent scientists again and again over the course of this past year and a half now of these kinds of assaults. We admire you. We deeply respect what you're doing. Thank you for inviting us to be on here. And we're standing up for science and standing with you.
Thank you so much, Norm. You and Jen have been it's just been great to have you in our corner. Really wonderful to have your support and expertise. And, if anything pops up with regard to lawsuits, we'll be yelling in your direction. We'd love to have, I think, a democracy defender stand up for science. A collaboration could be a lot of fun. So thank you so much for joining us today. All right. So next up, we have, sorry guys, we're cooking right along in our program today, which is always fun when we're on time. All right, so next up we have Craig McLean. Craig has over 45 years of experience in ocean science, law, policy, and marine operations, which heavens knows is really, really important right now, especially with this recent NOAA bit that just came out. He is a successful international leader, advocate, and visionary voice for ocean science and policy. McLean is recognized internationally as a leader in ocean policy and ocean diplomacy and is frequently invited to speak on these subjects. He enjoys implementing strategies for science, turning science into policy, and advising others on how to do so. His career in NOAA spans service as Senior Commissioned Officer and as a member of the Senior Executive Service. He has decades of experience in creating and implementing large science programs, congressional relations, marine and climate science policy, and law. He was captain of NOAA research ships and conducted many ocean explorations, fisheries, ocean mapping, deep sea diving, and exploration operations and expeditions. And as if that wasn't enough, Craig is joining us today from the National Academy's science state of science address, and he's just popped out, and so that he can pop back in, and we're really grateful that he was able to join us. Craig, have at it.
Colette, thank you very much, and I want to thank the Stand Up for Science folks. So I'm here out on Constitution Avenue, and I'm looking straight away at the Washington Monument. I could look at the greatness of this city and think of what built this country. It was innovation, it was risk-taking, it was courageous people who might wear lab coats or they might be out in the middle of the ocean deploying gear over the side in a storm. And when I see where we are right now, it's very concerning to me. So I hope what you're doing, wherever you're sitting, at home or at work or wherever you might be, is to be taking notes on what has been said about this rather destructive OMB proposed rule and be thinking about what you're going to say, how you're going to write it. And you might be writing two things. One is where and how this is destructive of the scientific enterprise in the United States. But the second thing is you might be writing a check to support Stand Up for Science so that this organization of volunteers can continue to move forward and keep organizing events like this one, where we as a science community can communicate, can connect, and can make sure that we enrich each other's understanding of what is coming to us and how to deal with it, how to fight back. So I want to start with a story. I was at NOAA for 40 years. I think you know that. And my latter portion of time at NOAA, because of the career position I had, I was also sitting in the seat of the acting chief scientist. And after Sharpiegate and Hurricane Dorian, I was dismissed from that chief scientist position because the president had a flawed weather forecast. One could argue, had a political weather forecast. He was given a warning to a particular state down in the Gulf and asking those people to heed the warning that he himself was giving to them, although the warning was unnecessary. The hurricane wasn't going there. And instead of owning up to it, you know that someone, probably the president himself, exercised a Sharpie on the NOAA hurricane map. But worse, NOAA political appointees watched and were complicit in the generation of a public message that chastised and compromised the intelligence, the dignity, and the efficacy of our National Weather Service forecasters and all the research that was behind it. Absolutely unthinkable, but there it went. It happened. So when I look now at a president who gives a political forecast and his political appointees support him in that aired forecast, which put people at risk. And now we come to see what's going on with this OMB proposed rule that would even further command political obedience by science. Ladies and gentlemen, we elect policy every 4 years. We pick our candidates based on what they believe in. Now, one could debate whether or not this current president has the majority of voters. I assert he doesn't. 99 million people could have voted. 77 voted for him. 75 voted against him or for another candidate. But I wouldn't say that the majority of voters selected this man. And the policies that he is implementing right now are draconian. They are basically the artifacts of a Luddite. They are taking us backwards. And the ire with which Mr. Voigt and others seem to approach the federal government, federal servants, and science is to me unexplainable. Because when Trump huffed and puffed up the steps of the White House after being released from the National Medical Center in Bethesda, he nearly died of COVID, or so the story is told. And it was science that delivered to him the release and return to a healthy life. But yet he seems to be antagonistic towards science. And please do remember as well that what we earned in the COVID vaccination was not the product of 6, 8, 10, 12 months worth of concerted effort. It was a 20-year research project that had gone on and was applied to this particular circumstance. So science need not have an urgent and immediate outcome in order to be valuable. But what you should be noting inside of this OMB proposed rule is the rather fallacious nature of thinking that political guidance will be the best outcome for science. This nation was not built on that. This nation was built on political philosophy that would support science to allow innovation and the prosperity that we've known today as America. Well, one of the things that was being discussed inside the national academies was how we are slipping behind China. We could be slipping behind many other countries if these policies continue in the direction that they're going. This is a very dangerous time. This is a very important time for the scientific community to be speaking, number one, in plain language, number two, as wide a body of constituents as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. Number three, engage in discourse civilly, but correct people when their facts are wrong and they have mistaken information at their hands, and explain to them what the right information is. But we can't sit still, and I commend Stand Up for Science for taking the initiative to organize all of us in order to make something count here, because I usually end every discussion I offer, every presentation I make, with a picture of my granddaughter. I can't show you that right now because of the circumstances. But I don't want my granddaughter, who is 10, to be losing out on the joy she experiences when she gets to the beach and the ocean, and I watch her dance with joy, that famous phrase of dance like no one is watching. That is her expressive joy, because she's at the water's edge. And by the time she's my age, I'm 68, by the time she is my age, I fear that that ocean, that beach, that land, this America that I know will be looking different if we don't reverse these trends and tendencies. So please get active. Please get out of whatever seat you're in. Go stand on a milk crate and talk to people. Be loud. Be proud. Science is on your side. Let the rest of the world know it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Craig. All right. So at this point, we're going to transition a little bit more into some of the meat of the OMB proposal. I do want to, before I introduce our final speaker, I do just want to note that we have pulled some of your questions from the chat. So anything that our final speaker does not cover, I will cover at the end. So next up, we have the wonderful, you all may know her because she covered the OMB proposal just immediately, and it was the most readable rundown of a 412-page document I've ever seen in my life. So I am really excited to announce our next speaker, Dr. Elizabeth Ginexi, who served the National Institutes of Health for 22 years as a scientific program official, shaping biomedical and behavioral health research strategy. During her tenure, she managed a portfolio of 305 grants totaling $132 million across several institutes and centers. She co-authored 18 funding initiatives that generated 1,087 projects totaling $778 million, spanning mental health, substance use prevention, pain management, data science, and health service research. She left the NIH in April 2025 because she witnessed the new leadership was replacing NIH's scientifically driven system with one that is politically directed and violated the Public Health Service Act of 1944. She's been writing about the dismantling of the NIH on her Substack since December 2025. And like I said, we invited her here today because she just immediately jumped on this OMB proposal and helped us understand what was going on. We do have in the Action Center, which I think that we will, if we haven't already, link in the program offers. We'll link the OMB portal that you can use to register your public comment. We have her Substack listed there, and of course, we've got some folks who can also put that in the chat as well for everybody to take a look at. All right, Dr. Ginexi, have at it. It's all you.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for inviting me to be part of this prestigious panel. Really remarkable. I just want to say, as Colette mentioned, I did leave the NIH last year after 22 years. I didn't want to leave the NIH, but I really couldn't watch what was happening. And sadly, I saw this coming back then. So I've had my eye on this for a long time. And I started a Substack back in December to start writing about what I knew. I believe that scientists needed someone from the inside to explain what was actually happening in plain language without any bureaucratic hedging. And the response surprised me. People were hungry for it. Not just the scientists, but journalists, lawyers, legislators reached out to me, concerned citizens who had no idea that their tax dollars were being redirected and that researchers were being silenced and institutions were being hollowed out. And then last week, I was attending a scientific conference in Washington, D.C., when the news dropped about this OMB new rule proposal. I quickly downloaded this PDF to my laptop, and as I sat in the sessions, I was highlighting with the PDF tool all the sections that I thought were just horrendous from what I know from being a scientific program officer, what I knew would happen to the scientific community. And then I started talking to people around the conference about it to engage them. And people didn't really know what OMB was. They didn't know who Russell Vogt is. And they really didn't understand why I was on the verge of freaking out. So when I went home that night, I realized I had to do something. I had to create a written document that would clearly lay out for my scientific colleagues what this rule would mean for them. And so that's what I did. And you'll see that I put the titles in big, bold letters so it could be quite prominent, and walked folks through what I saw as the top things that were going to be horrible coming down the pike. I had hoped to come up with a top 10, sort of like David Letterman, but there were so many awful things in there. I think it wound up being more like 18. And no one wants to read a 400-page document. But I figured if they could at least read these 18 things, it might mobilize them. And I had no idea what would happen, but I woke up the next morning and my phone was buzzing and it got picked up. So here we are. All these journalists are calling me, and I realized we have an opportunity. I realized that no one who was furious really knew what to do. So given my knowledge about the Federal Register, having provided scientists with guidance on how to comment on the Federal Register in the past, I realized I was in the prime position to write a primer on how to do this. And the best ways to construct a comment, how to get there, how to get it noticed. And that's what you'll see on my Substack, a nice step-by-step how-to, section numbers included that you might like to cite. And I knew that if people knew not only how bad this was, but also what they could do, we could probably make a difference. And since then, I kept digging and I keep reading. And because this rule is so broad and it covers all of the federal agencies, you need to know that it doesn't just affect science. It will govern the entire $1.1 trillion in federal grants that flow from the states and the communities every year. Head Start programs, community health centers, special education programs, rural infrastructure, food assistance. Every dollar of that will also be subject to the same political appointee review that the scientific grants will. It will also have to meet presidential priorities, presumably. And so this is not just a science story, it's a story about the entire financial relationship between the federal government and the American people. So here's what we need you to do. The public comment begins now, it's open, and you have until July 13th. Under the Administrative Procedures Act, OMB is required to read every comment and respond to every significant one before this rule can be finalized. 3 paragraphs from a scientist describing exactly how a specific provision would destroy their line of research will carry more legal weight than 10,000 identical form letters, okay? So this needs to be your story. If you are scared and you don't want to put your name on it, that's fine. You can submit anonymous comments. Those will be read as well. but you all have standing, you all have expertise, and you all have a story that no one else can tell. Write your comment, share my primer, tell your colleagues, tell your department chairs, tell your professional societies, contact your members of Congress and tell them why this will be horrible. I spent 22 years at the NIH trying to help build something worth protecting there. And so did many of you. We have 6 weeks to say so on the record where it counts. So please use those 6 weeks. Join us. Let's make a record, the record number of comments that have ever been registered on a rule. I think we can do that.
I think we totally can too. And I will say, for folks who are wanting to make some noise about this, and I'm seeing some chatter in the chat about it, our Stand Up for Science Action Center it's a one-stop shop. You can leave your public comment. You can also, like, as you leave the public comment, we have it linked to the 412-page document, and we have it linked to Dr. Ginexi's very, very fantastic Substack. So you can get both to make sure that you're doing it right. The one thing that I will say about the public comments, please do not copy and paste anything. This needs to be personalized to you. If two comments are the same, they will count as one comment, so it's a waste. So part of the reason, usually when we do like our email, we have an email template that you can use to send to your members of Congress. That has a full template written out, and the reason for that is because they're going to read it. Like, it's going to get logged in the same way. That is not the case for comments, for public comment on regulations.gov. So we were very intentional about not including anything in there because we don't want people to submit things over and over again and rack up the comment count, and then those actually not get counted. So I definitely appreciate folks wanting us to make this as easy as possible, and also want to just note that it does matter that things are highly personalized. It's totally okay for you to pick one of these provisions. Write out in your comment what the provision number is. Dr. Ginexi's Substack, it does a fabulous job of noting the provision numbers, and just say, I would like to comment on this provision. Here's XYZ reason why it's going to be horrible for me as a member of the public, as a scientist in this area. Every person can and should leave a public comment because this is going to impact everyone. So does Congress have any power to stop the rule going into effect? Yes. And this is the reason why we have also in our Action Center included an email and auto caller. It's like it's sort of similar to how 5calls.org does it, except for it's just all in our one place. We give you a script about what to say. Congress can issue a joint stay, essentially, of this rule. It has to come from It has to come from everybody, though. So it has to be everybody. And that is notable because it means that even if you live in a red district, even if you live in a red state, you need to be calling and contacting your members of Congress. The other thing is that with part of the reason why we wanted to have Norm on with us today is because we recognize the importance of legal strategy, especially as we sort of play this out. These comments, number one, making a stink about it and having tons and tons of comments, which, on our portal alone, I think we have over 1,300 comments. And those, there's been so many comments that the government team is having problems quickly getting the comments listed publicly. So there's a backlog of something like 2,000 comments, and our 1,300 are included in that. But these comments lay the groundwork for legal action next. And they also signal to Congress that this is not something that the public is okay about. So these comments sort of do double duty. Ideally, tons of comments come in, OMB et al. They're like, okay, we can't do any of this rule. If that doesn't work, Congress can step in. If Congress doesn't work, we will step in with lawsuits. So we need everybody. This is a 5-alarm fire, banging down the doors. Call your members of Congress on your way into work. Add their phone numbers to your phone and just give them a call all the way through on speakerphone so you're not using your hand to dial. You can also use our auto dialer. The next thing is, are there resources analyzing the impact of the proposed rules? I would suggest looking at science impact maps and Grant Witness. You can, sort of match that to what the economic impact was in 2025 of when, these cuts were being brought through. I think that could be really powerful, especially if you're talking to your members of Congress in the House to go by district or by state. And then, are there efforts to build shared messaging around these points? Yes. So we also have, Stand Up for Science also has a brief rundown on our Substack, on our standupforscience.foundation page in the on the policy section. You can look at our brief rundown there. I mean, I think that Dr. Ginexi's Substack is like the reign of this, so definitely recommend checking that out. And then I'm also seeing some bits here about getting the public involved and making sure that the public understands this. I will say earlier today, I was on Scripps News talking about this. We are actively pitching this all across the board. We have press and journalists here in this meeting now that are reporting on this. Tony Rahm did a piece, and our director of policy, Cole Donovan, was quoted in that. It was the #1 article this afternoon on the New York Times, which is just to say that this is breaking through. This is a huge story. It is breaking through, and I think that folks are really hearing about it. There were some folks asking about where and how you can submit comments. We will link our action center, but you can also go to standupforscience.net/take action, and you'll see the Suffs Fight for Win box, and you can just click on that. It'll take you right to the action center. Dr. Ginexi, I know I just verbal vomited all over everyone. Anything that you would like to add to this before we head out?
Yes, I would say that individuals can comment, but organizations can also comment. So if you're part of a professional society, a community group, universities theoretically could, any organization or nonprofits that have a board of directors, you can write an organizational statement and submit that as well. And if, like I said, I've spoken to a lot of people who are actually afraid. And if you really don't want your name, you can go direct to the registry site from my Substack, and you won't have to enter your name at all. You won't have to enter your address, your email, or anything. You can do it anonymously. So I want to make that clear. I know that this has been a very scary time where people are really afraid of being targeted. So that is valid, and we need to accommodate.
Yes, absolutely. Co-sign everything Dr. Ginexi just said. All right, everyone. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. This was recorded, and we will be posting it for anyone who registered. And we'll also be posting it on YouTube, so you can share this with your friends and family, and all of your fellow scientists and colleagues. Thank you all so much for taking an hour out of your day. I cannot believe that 2,200 of you joined us and stayed on this entire time. I'm really just floored by the fact that the scientific community is just really jumping to. So thank you all so very much. We're really excited that you were able to join us today, and let's keep standing up for science. Thank you, everyone.